Welcome to the final episode of Centre Pass Extra for season 2013. What a season it has been. On today's show, we're going to reflect back on the season that was. All the highs, the lows, the drama, the controversy, everything that has happened in the ANZ Championship this season. Joining me to do so, none other than Kathryn Harby-Williams, former Australian captain. Kathryn, let's get straight down to it. The premiers for 2013, the Adelaide Thunderbirds. 13-game winning streak all the way to the premiership, capping it off with a 2-goal win in the decider.
You could say then that they probably deserve it, Dan.
Perhaps.
Up against a side that nobody expected to make the top four, let alone push the Thunderbirds in the grand final. But it was the best grand final ever. There were so many twists and turns in it, a few coaching moves here and there. But I think with the Thunderbirds, the players did enough at different times to make sure that going into the home stretch that they were really going to be hard to beat. And a credit to the Firebirds, they kept pushing until the very end. They didn't make the mistakes that they were renowned for. In reflection, they'll be very proud of what they've achieved, but don't say that to them yet because they won't understand that, because it very much hurts to lose a grand final. But all credit to the Thunderbirds, a fantastic way for their captain Nat Bomberto to go out completely from the game. She'll remember that game for the rest of her life, and she was the reason that the Thunderbirds won, really, because it was her individual efforts at the end of the second quarter that really turned the game for the Thunderbirds.
Almost an absolute breakout year too for Erin Bell, player of the grand final, totally matured as a player in 2013 and now stamps her authority as perhaps one of Australia's best goalers at the moment.
Yeah, and I've got to be honest, I didn't think she was that good when I first saw her. She has grown over the last few years to be a player that really stands up under pressure. In the grand final in 2010, she played a blinder again the other week. So look, all credit to her. She, in my mind, is now Australia's best goal attack. The test for her now, Dan, will be to take that next step up, because she has put some ordinary games out for Australia. If ever she's going to play well for them, it is now. So it'll be interesting to see how she goes in the international series later on in the year. Looking
forward to that. Well, let's talk about the Foxtel All-Star team, voted by the fans, the public of the ANZ Championship. All the netball lovers got on board and voted for their favourite players in each position. A good representation of the stars of each of the 7 positions on court. Let's go through it now. Janelle Fowler, the goal shooter. Erin Bell selected in at goal attack. Madison Brown, the wing attack, once again, same as she was last year. Laura Langman in the centre, likewise. Renee Hallen in wing defence. Casey Coppola, goal defence from the Magic, and Jiva Mentor from the Vixens at goalkeeper. The coach, Jane Williams-Thompson. Kathryn, what are your thoughts on that all-star team?
I picked 6 out of those 7, and Jane certainly would be my coach of the year. The only one that I've got a question mark is over Coppola. Very slow to start, very good toward the end. So when the fans are voting, she's probably top of mind. But I had Chatfield in as my goal defence, and Bully has had a very good season as well. So that position, I guess, was a little bit difficult to select. But Coppola at her best is the best defender going around at goal defence. So it's not out of the ordinary, but just not one that I would pick.
All right, let's move on to the Most Valuable Player Award. It was a race in one, potentially. Of course, a lot of people thought this would be the Janelle Fowler Award, and as it turned out, it was. A standout debut season for the Jamaican spearhead playing with the Southern Steel. 666 goals for the season, scoring over 65 goals twice, which is just ridiculous, yes. Kathryn. But winning the MVP by 19 points. Just 1 point, should I say, ahead of Romelda Aiken, so a lot closer than what many people predicted. 1 point behind Aiken, Carla Borrego. So the big 3 Jamaicans going first, second, third.
It goes to show how important it is to have those players in the ANZ Championship, because they bring so much to the game. But look, I would have thought Fowler was going to be a runaway winner of that. But with MVP voting, it's always a little bit controversial, but she won it, and deservedly so. She was a freak, really. She was a great find, and great for the Steel that she has signed on again, because she's certainly going to be a reason that the Steel will start forging ahead in terms of moving up the ladder. I thought Brown might have finished second. Every game I saw her play, she was a standout. But it's all about who takes votes away from you, etc. So at the end of the day, the best player in the competition won that award, which is great.
Let's have a look at the top 10 of the MVP, and we'll get your thoughts on that, Kathryn. So the 3 Jamaicans taking the top 3 spots: Laura Langman, the captain of the Magic, in 4th place; Natalie Medhurst with 17 votes; Madison Brown there 13 in 6th place; Katrina Grant, the captain of the Pulse; Bianca Chatfield in 8th; Renee Hallen in 9th; Jiva Mentor in 11th. What are your thoughts on that? Any notable omissions for you there, Kathryn?
Well, I do find it interesting, Dan, that it's the attacking players that have dominated at the higher levels. It's only when you get down to Grant that a defender comes to the party, and we all know they're the reasons that games are won. But look, a lot of those players would come to mind in terms of really good seasons, and as I said, it's very hard for everyone to agree on the best players, but there's no one there that I would have thought, that's a bit unusual that they're featuring at that level, and you've got to watch every game intently to know if that's exactly where they sit, but everyone has different opinions, so I think it's a solid top 10 or whatever it is.
The other official award of the ANZ Championship was, of course, the best new player for a player in their debut season, or perhaps, sorry, for a player that has played 5 or less games in the previous season. So Janelle Fowler again, obviously taking out this award, but this year did unearth some good new talent in Kim Revillion and Gabby Simpson from the Firebirds, and Bailey Mez in there as well. But perhaps it was Janelle Fowler, just a breakthrough, outstanding year there.
And Paige Hadley, another one as well. I don't know if she qualifies. I assume she does. But yes, look, some rising stars for Australia, and Jamaica would be more than happy. God, they've got Fowler and Aitken. How do they fit them in? And it's interesting because Fowler and Aitken played in the goal attack, goal shooter position at last World Champs. And they used Aitken in a feeding role, which was surprised everybody, so it sort of defeated the purpose. So it'll be interesting to see if Jamaica actually use those two in the shooting circle and just get them to stand there and see who can get their hands on the ball. But who's better? That's the question. So, but look, best new talent, Fowler by a mile, but great to see that there are some names that we're going to be talking about for a long time to come.
Who is better? Who would you have as your starting Jamaican shooter, Fowler or Aitken? Half and half.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, there was lots of discussion topics and newsworthy stories this year in the ANZ Championship. We're going to discuss a few of the main ones. The first one, obviously, that happened early on in the season was the physicality controversy. Irene van Dijk not happy with the attention the Fever defenders got to her. She hit out in the press. Norma Plummer hit back. Robin Broughton and Donna Wilkins got involved with the Firebirds. It was all on, and everyone's saying that netball was becoming too physical, but we loved the excitement and the interest that it created, because the game is hard and tough, but it's just one of the great aspects of it now, isn't it?
Yeah, the profile of the game just rose to another level, particularly in New Zealand, but also in Australia. People would never talk about the game. We're discussing the Van Dijk comments, and it was focusing on the Fever and did they overstep the mark. Firstly, Van Dijk's comments were out of character, so I was interested to see that she would come out and say those things, but she had one of her worst performances in her career, so obviously not used to that, and that generates different emotions. And then it was just a slangy match, Plummer trying to take some of the focus away from her team, which I thought was good, but at the same time continued to create some controversy and people talked about the game. So you can say what you like about it, but the fact is that people are talking netball, and if you're a netball fan, that's exactly what you want. So, you know, maybe we need to train our players to say controversial things every week.
Get on board. Well, in every season there's always a surprise packet, be it a team or an individual player, a bit of a bolter. Who was your surprise packet this year, Kathryn, and what was a season full of surprises?
Yeah, a couple. Bailey Mez comes to mind. You know, she's picked as a Silver Fern wing attack after playing about 15 minutes in the ANZ Championship last season. But she has pushed Latu out of her position, and Latu, in my mind, at her best, is a superstar, and really dominated toward the end of the season. So it'll be interesting to see her future over the next year or two. And Lee Waddington, the 28-year-old recruit for the Thunderbirds, just played a vital role throughout the season, but more recently in that grand final, an absolute coup, and just a great player, great team person, and just really level-headed. So a terrific recruit for the Thunderbirds.
Perhaps one of the biggest surprise packets too was how well the youth in the Firebirds midcourt did. Not many people, as we've mentioned, would have thought they would make the grand final, but they came 2 goals within winning the title. Really, really outstanding in what not many people predicted could occur. Yeah,
we talk about Jane Woodlands-Thompson, but you've got to give Jenke some credit. She had a big turnover of players last year, and brought these rookies in, and they played for her, and they overachieved in many people's minds. But you know, you look at, we'll talk later about the team to watch next year, but the Firebirds are right up there.
Certainly are. How about your biggest underperforming team, Kathryn? A lot of teams at the start of the year all had hopes of making the top 4, and a lot of hype around different teams that could be there. Only 6 teams missed out, obviously, but who was your biggest underperforming team for the year?
Yeah, Mystics come to mind, but you know, they suffered so many injuries, you almost have to move them out of the equation. The Swifts probably certainly didn't achieve what I thought they would. And the other one is the Fever. We've constantly talked about, you know, time has come that they're going to cause some major upsets and start moving up the ladder. Yes, their season was okay, but I thought they may have done a bit more and caused a few more upsets. So a few teams fitting that bill, Dan.
Yeah, for me, the team that comes to mind is the Central Pulse. They've had their best ever finish to the season, which they did have a terrific year, but they just put themselves in winning positions so often that they failed to capitalise on perfect opportunities. Yeah. There was a couple of games that they lost there by 1 or 2 goals that they probably should have won. If they had, they would have been playing in the finals. Yeah. And with the experience they had across the board and the wonderful coach in Robin Broughton, they could have gone a long way in that final series.
Remember that game they lost against the Mystics?
Controversial game too, that contact call against Katrina Grant. It will haunt them, you know, for the off-season for sure. Well, let's now talk about the most underrated player. In every team, there's the superstars. In every team, there are the underrated players that just go about their business and do their job for their team. Who are some players that stand out for you in that role, Kathryn?
Well, there's one that comes to mind straight away, and it's Beck Bully. She's just played in a premiership team, and you hardly mention her. I told you earlier that during the commentary we didn't even mention her name, yet her opponent only shot 9 goals and is a superstar in her own right, and that's Nat Medhurst. So very much an underrated player, very well regarded by her teammates, but I think if people look from the outside in, because she doesn't have the stats to go with it, people sort of overlook her, but she certainly plays her role, so she's certainly the one for me.
Chelsea Pittman's a name that comes to mind for me as well. A lot of people put all the focus on Kim Ravine and Nat Medhurst in giving the ball to Romelda Aiken, but when Pittman fires, she really sends that ball into Aiken and puts a lot of trouble on the opposition defence lines. Bailey Mez, as you mentioned, is one of the surprise packets. Really did just come from nowhere when not many people thought she would be as damaging as she was. Speaking of rising stars, Kathryn, who would you think was the best rising star this year?
Well, I know everyone talks about Revillion, and she certainly is going to be, I guess, the next person to fill Nat Von Berto's shoes, but Gabby Simpson really does it for me. Wing defence is not a position that you notice very much, and she just has great acceleration off the mark, which is a very important aspect to have in the game of netball, and reads the game really well. And during her growth, she'll start getting rid of some of the poor execution that she suffers from when there's pressure on. But, I think she's certainly a star of the future. And Paige Hadley, I saw some games that she has shown that she's certainly got a mature head about her, so she's certainly a rising star.
And perhaps the performances of some of the senior players in the competition as well. What did you make of them? Irene Van Dyke's been around for a long time. Catherine Cox. Sherelle McMahon, we know, had her comeback year this year. It was great to see her back out on the court for the Vixens.
Yeah, they're interesting, aren't they? I think they've got a role to play. Van Dyke used to dominate every game, and now that doesn't happen, but she still has the ability to dominate, and I think both Cox and Sherelle fit into that category. It'll be interesting to see what Sherelle does. She really struggled to, I guess, get some flow during the course of the season, and probably prevented by the fact that Caldwell was doing so well. But it's whether or not she wants to continue in the game. But they all have a role to play. It's how you manage them.
Well, let's turn our attention now to season 2014. The off-season period is always very exciting, with a lot of turnover of players from each clubs and who will end up where. A couple of moves already in terms of coaching fronts. The New South Wales Swifts will have a new coach in Rob Wright, the first male head coach in the ANZ Championship, which is a terrific achievement for Rob. Megan Anderson, former Swifts player, of course, Australian player and assistant coach at the Mystics, will join him as his assistant. In Magic, Julie Fitzgerald, now the former Swifts coach, will coach over in Magic. So a lot of movement already in the coaching front, and really interesting appointments.
Yeah, and so important. You've got to, in the ANZ Championship, you have a mixture of those players who've been around for a long time and the up-and-comers. The up-and-comers will love any coach because they're learning so much. It's how you manage those older players to, who are perhaps getting a little bit stale, need to be freshened up, don't want to be told what to do all the time, but still need some instruction. So it's almost player management as much as reading the game tactically. So a real challenge. Great to see a male involved. So hopefully he gets the respect that he deserves. And Fitzgerald, look, she's been around for a long time. A lot of controversy in New Zealand, I've got to tell you, Dan, about bringing an Australian coach in and blocking the pathway for a local coach. But it seems like it's like a 1 or 2 year plan until someone is really ready to step in. So she's got Margaret Forsyth, a New Zealand legend, as her assistant coach. So, they'll learn a lot from her. But again, will she keep Van Dyke, Copper and Langman? There's talk that Van Dyke may want to stay in Wellington because she travels to Hamilton for training. There's talk that they want to stay together, those three. So a lot of work to do for the Magic because, if those three go, it's a whole new ball game for that franchise.
Well, if you look ahead to season 2014, Kath, which team right now, we don't know the official team list, but the speculations to who may end up where. Which team will you be watching very closely in the off-season and at the start of the season next year?
As you said, there's so much player movement, all that loyalty no longer exists. Even look at Shani Layton, she just won a premiership with the Thunderbirds. She loves her environment, but she's from Melbourne, and that's where her family is, and that's a strong lure. So where will she end up next year? I think the Firebirds are the team for me. They've just played in the grand final. They've narrowly lost. They've got some youngsters who are on the rise. Aiken's not going to... She's not that old, actually. She's been around for so long. So she's still going to be there. Medhurst will still be there, and she's still got a lot to offer. Geitz is going to continue to play good form. Goal defence is, they shared that role with Messer and McLeod. If they can get someone, perhaps to step into that position and put out some regular strong performances, and that will make a difference. So that's a team for me, Dan.
It's all going to happen in season 2014. We can't wait. We also know that the announcement of the Australian Diamond Squad has been named over just late last week. Of course, it was a 17-player squad, reduced to the normal number of in the mid-20s, I believe it was. But these are the 17 players in contention to wear the Diamonds dress later this year. In the goaling front, Caitlin Thwaites, Catherine Cox, Caitlin Bassett, Erin Bell, Natalie Medhurst and Tegan Caldwell. In the midcourt, Kimberly Green, Madison Brown, Renee Hallinan, Kim Revillion, Gabby Simpson and Paige Hadley, both Simpson and Hadley making their debuts into the squad. And defensively, Rebecca Bully, Bianca Chatfield, Laura Geitz, Julie Coletto and Shani Layton. Some notable omissions there, Kathryn. What are the ones that stand out for you?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is Ashley Braswell. Was on fire early in the season, but then suffered an ankle injury and perhaps didn't come back as well as she could have. But you look at her talent and you think, she's got the talent to be an Australian representative on a regular basis. So overlooked, but also interesting because the people that she was overlooked for are young and up and coming players like Simpson and Hadley, who I don't expect would make their debut in this year anyway, whereas Braswell, she's certainly got the ability to actually step in and play straight away. So that was, I guess, for me, the interesting one. The other one you could argue about is Corletto. Didn't have a very good season, but look, we know what she can offer, and if she goes to the training camps and performs like she does for the Diamonds on a regular basis, then she'll certainly make that team.
Big question is, no Nat Bomberto, the captain there now. Who is your front runner to become the next Australian Diamonds captain?
Well, it's interesting because there's so much rotation. It's hard to find a player who's on the court all the time, and you want your captain on there all the time. Geitz is the one that comes to mind, but she hasn't dominated the goalkeeper position for Australia because Chatfield has had a go. Layton's been there, but she's certainly comes to the fore. Kim Green, she's probably another one who, with that mid-court, particularly without Von Berto, that will be on court regularly. And you really want your captain to be out there all the time. So not only do you have to pick someone with leadership qualities, you've got to pick someone with the game that enables them to be out on court all the time. Maybe co-captains, Dan.
Well, certainly looking forward to seeing how it all unfolds. Of course, the international season coming up later in the year, the Diamonds, Silver Ferns, and also up against Malawi. Well, that is all we have time for this week's episode of Centre Pass Extra, and that brings us to the end of our Centre Pass podcast for season 2013. It's been a terrific year. Thank you very much for joining us, and Kathryn, it's been great working alongside you, and thank you for all your insights throughout the season. It has been absolutely outstanding. Congratulations once again to the Adelaide Thunderbirds, and of course Natalie Von Berto retiring out as an absolute champion. It's been a fantastic season. We look forward to 2014 already. Until next time, goodbye for now.